Welcome to the Delaware County Commissioners meeting Monday, June 3rd, 2019 at 9:03. Let's please stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we start the meeting, I wish for everybody just to remember the Virginia Beach fellow public servants that had a tragedy this past weekend. When you go to your house of worship or your faith this week. Roll call, please.
Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. Henry.
Here.
Ms. Reagan.
Present.
Mr. Brook.
Here.
Okay, approval of minutes, please.
Motion to approve. Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Henry.
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Ms. Reagan.
Yes. Thank you. And today we have the honor of having the Muncie Land Bank and Mr. West. Is he here?
Yes.
Oh, there he is. Yes. Please fill us in.
So, I'm John West. I'm an assistant professor of urban planning at Ball State University. For the past 3 years, I have been working on starting a land bank in Muncie. A land bank is an entity that takes care of abandoned property or property that nobody else needs or wants. About a year ago, we contracted with consultants who have helped us come up with a startup plan. This project has been a collaboration between the city, the foundation community, and the county. And the consultants have arrived at a plan for us that is very much reliant on the cooperation and growth of relationships between the city, the county, and the private sector. So I would like to introduce Thriving Communities. They're going to come up and talk about their plan and some of their analysis. And I thank you for your time. I do have something that I'd like to pass out to the commissioners here. I'll just step up here.
John, is that recording well?
You were right. What intention? Go ahead.
Is that red light on? This microphone, is the red light on?
It's blue.
Blue is on.
Yeah, it's on.
Thank you, Mr. West, and thanks to the County Commissioners for allowing me to present this morning. My name is Jim Rokakis. I was a city councilman in Cleveland for 19 years, but I spent 14 years as a county treasurer, and so we have a county treasurer in the room. When I was serving in public office, my county, Cuyahoga County, which is where Cleveland was located, was devastated by the foreclosure crisis, and we went to the legislature with a bill that would allow us to create a powerful county land bank to deal with the foreclosed and vacant properties. Since that time, I left public office at the end of 2010. We have formed over 50 county land banks in Ohio, but we've also helped to set up land banks in Omaha and Memphis and the suburbs of Chicago and some of the rural communities in Illinois. The role of the Muncie Land Bank, I'm going to move this forward, we think that it should become the preferred entity for properties not sold at tax ad deed sales. It's a predictable entity. We've come to learn that land banks, you can rely upon them. They're predictable. They can acquire and dispose of properties for responsible buyers. They should be active. The best land banks we have, and I think the best in the country, happens to be in our county, in Cuyahoga County. They're active in acquiring and repurposing abandoned property and looking for ways to deal with them. And we think it should become the dedicated entity that can begin to forge relationships to achieve its statutory mission. In Ohio, land banks are, in our experience now, because we have a land bank association of over, as I said, 55 land banks in Ohio, and we're at a point now where the first question many of the communities ask is, if we have a problem property, can we send this to the land bank? Muncie is the first land bank created under the 2016 state legislation. We think Muncie can lead the state in setting the gold standard for land banks throughout Ohio. Abandonment is certainly not just an Indiana problem, it's a national problem, at least in many, many states. And You know what the cost of abandonments are. It decreases values of neighboring properties. As these properties become vacant, it discourages neighbors. They begin to move away. Property sales begin to plummet. Tax revenues plummet. And there are studies, and I've shared this with Professor West, over 50 studies that we have just in the past 10 years that have talked about abandonment and vacant properties, how they lead to an increase in crime, fire danger, certainly injuries, people who are injured in these vacant properties, vermin, and drug use. And the benefits for a land bank, and again, we'll talk about this further, is you just, I think, need a single purpose entity that can take these abandoned properties and repurpose them for reuse. In our experience, they will increase property values. And when you increase property values by repurposing a property, it has an impact on nearby properties, resulting in higher sale prices and an increase in property values. And that's the one thing we saw when I was county treasurer, as we began to deal with these properties and move them forward from being abandoned into repurposed. It began to add value there. And there is a study about to release in our county that shows that the impact of our land bank in 10 years is at $1.4 billion, and much of that is by value increases in adjoining properties. So I'm going to turn this at this point, I believe, to Gus Rangos. Gus is the head of the Cuyahoga County Land Bank. He is an attorney who wrote the land bank bill in Ohio that we think has become the gold standard for land banks around the country.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. As Jim said, I was involved in the beginning with writing statutes in Ohio, which have now become, the shoe hasn't dropped, so they're still working. As Jim said, we have 54 some land banks. As part of my role in the consultancy is to analyze the statutes in Indiana and to suggest some statutory changes. But in the meantime, we have the reality of what the current statutes are and how the Muncie Land Bank can operate. And what we have uncovered, and it's something that you probably already know, is that it's very difficult to clear titles under Indiana law. You have a tax lien sale system without getting into all the details between the sale A, the sale B, the tax deed process, and then ultimately quiet titling actions. Properties that sometimes have the opportunity to be rehabbed or to be repurposed by that time, and through that process, it pretty much sometimes the property loses its value. And what ends up happening is we often end up socializing the loss and we privatize the gain. And what the Ohio statutes did, and what we recommend, is that be equalized. And there are ways to do that under existing Indiana law, so that, the way to do that is to make tax foreclosure, tax enforcement more predictable, so that when the land bank serves as a clearinghouse for identifying properties, for referring them to the city enforcement authority, and ultimately getting that information to the county auditor and to the county commissioners, there's a front end assumption as to where these properties are going to go, so that people can plan, redevelopers can be identified, and then there's a more systematic process rather than the unpredictable process that exists now. It's not to say that the system is bad here, it's just a bit unpredictable and sometimes unreliable. And with a land bank serving as that clearinghouse, there's an opportunity to service those properties while they're waiting redevelopment, and it's just a more systematic and more productive way to deal with vacant and abandoned properties. There is no question that properties that are sold in Delaware County in tax sales, they're like 3 to 5 times more likely to be back. They're likely to come back in tax foreclosure. In our county, for example, when we sell properties or they're forfeited, we found that 85%, there was an 85% rate of failure, 15% rate where the property did get purchased, got rehabbed, and back on a long-term tax collection status. That has reversed now in Cuyahoga County. Now anything that comes to the land bank, there is some failure, but 85 to 90% of properties coming through the land bank that get triaged and back out into productive hands, 85 to 90% of those are successful. After 5 years, they continue to be on the tax duplicate. So there isn't a short-term impulse to want to collect, but that is just a collection function, and we would submit that the better function is to try to collect where possible, but also expand the tax base. Selling tax lien certificates on vacant and abandoned property often doesn't result in an expansion of the tax base. It's a short-term fix, and it ends up basically zeroing itself out because you have to go back to sale and the cost and the expense and the time and the decay that occurs when that property comes back. So we would recommend a balance, and that's going to require an awful lot of collaboration. But the good news is that the statutes in Indiana do allow that. And what we're recommending, this is a short graphic of what John just handed out to you. Between the nonprofit sector that you have here, the auditor, the city's enforcement authority, the land bank, and the executive. The executive, we're referring to the commissioners there. The statutes often talk of executives, so I often use that interchangeably, but what we really mean is commissioners. And so our idea is to have the role, if you look at the commissioner's role in that handout that you have, that is the area that we would recommend that the commissioners engage in with the land bank, the city, and the nonprofits. It is a revenue neutral activity, but it would give everybody an upfront, more predictable hand at trying to rehab these properties rather than having them go to speculation. Speculation sometimes turns out good, but most of the time, as the data shows, it does not. So that's what we would ask, and we think that it's productive. It's not anything that would markedly change the existing systems in Delaware County. And this particular slide references that. So we would call that internal collaborations, meaning the city's enforcement authority doing the research with the land bank and its nonprofits and identifying vacancy and abandonment, referring those in a very strategic way to the county commissioner so that there's an upfront, predictable outcome for vacant and abandoned properties. That's the internal, that would be the internal relationships. The external relationships are the land bank, Habitat, Pathway, all those organizations that are already doing this work. So you have infrastructure here, you have assets here, and we would just recommend that they be harnessed in a way that they end up with a more productive outcome for vacant and abandoned property. I believe that's it, and I will now introduce to you Robin Thomas. She also works for Thriving Communities, and she administers the association's work in Ohio, and she can show you the outcomes that are possible with these kind of collaborations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gus. I get the fun part of the presentation. The startup plan that we've talked about with the Muncie Land Bank is on the slide in front of you. This initial startup plan will include policies and procedures and forms that have already been drafted and are ready for approval by the board of the Muncie Land Bank. And that's one of the tasks that my organization has been working on with the board. A key element is going to be identifying a funding source for that initial year of operation. As you know, nothing happens without funding. So we are going to be meeting later on in the day with the Ball Brothers Foundation, and then this evening with City Hall, City Council, in order to look for funding for that initial year to get things started. And the Land Bank has set a modest goal of, during the time between now and the first of the year, to take 4 abandoned properties and to bring those back into a productive status. And 2 of those properties have structures on them with the hope that they can be rehabbed, and 2 of those are vacant properties with the hope that either a structure can be built on those properties or that it can become a property belonging to a neighbor, belonging to a community group, that's something that serves the community. So what does a successful land bank do? In Ohio, we were able to demolish over 30,000 structures during the last couple of years. So one item that a land bank will do when necessary is demo properties and make that property available for productive use. The land bank here and in other states we'll do some rehabilitation of properties. And those end properties can go to, besides going to homeowners, first-time homeowners, we've had programs for homes for disabled veterans, sober living facilities, transitional housing, some rental properties, developmentally challenged adults, and for abused women. All of these are examples from what other counties and other states have done with their rehab program. They've turned vacant lots into the list you can see here: parks, side lots, gardens, urban farms, and then in some cases parking for businesses, for places of worship. And in Ohio, one county in Ohio, a small county, used the land bank to acquire parking for their annual haunted house, which doesn't sound like a big deal here, but for that community, keeping kids and teenagers from running across the street was a very helpful thing. There's been a lot of collaboration with different entities in all of the counties and other states that have had land banks. A key element is Habitat for Humanity, and we have the CEO, is it, of Habitat here to say a few words. A lot of work with community organizations, churches, the regional sewer district, which we've spoken with here during our last visit, working carefully with them with property that they have left over really after they put in a new infrastructure. We worked with training programs, people that came through drug court need to do some community service, and working with them to assist the land bank. And we have agreements with the different cities and townships. So that's pretty much our presentation. I don't know if there's time for questions here, but we'll go ahead and hear from Habitat, and we'll go from there.
Good morning. My name's Lindsay Arthur, and I am the CEO of Muncie Habitat for Humanity. I have stood here before and actually requested for tax deeds to be given to our organization on behalf of our coalition. We are working to bring about quality of life in South Central and Thomas Park Avondale neighborhoods right now. We're working with actually a lot of nonprofits in many different sectors of the community, but access to land, access to property has been an issue. Muncie Habitat for Humanity has been serving as an ad hoc land bank for our coalition efforts. We have been securing properties, perfecting deeds on behalf of other organizations that have limited capacity and do not have the ability to perfect deeds on their own due to lack of staffing. So we've been carrying that burden, and we certainly would urge you to consider the Muncie Land Bank and the value that it can provide to this community.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. West. Now, I read that you have your 501c3 completed. Have you accepted that?
We contracted with a lawyer to write our 501c3 application, and we submitted it in March. The IRS is a little bit slow in getting it back to us. All indications are that it's going to go through because they haven't requested additional documents. So we're hoping any day here to get the final notification.
And I noticed our treasurer, Mr. Carroll, could you come up and we're having this tax sale coming up in what, July or August? Good morning. The 4 properties they were interested in, are they in that tax sale that's coming up?
I'm not sure which 4 of those were. I don't think
No, those are properties that we're acquiring from other public entities.
Okay. So when do you think you would be able to receive something then?
After the spring lien sale. After the second, the sale in the spring.
Okay. I mean, next spring? Okay. And it is called the Muncie Land Bank, and you're wanting some funding from the city tonight. Will you ever be able to expand out into the county?
We would like to, but expansion of that sort would require more money.
So right now, we're just focusing on the city.
Okay.
And our percent of the county's nil compared to what the city is paying. But it's all such good news, and I was in on the presentation a couple months ago, and it was there. And it's just very impressive what Ohio has done. How are we doing with the legislatures getting some changes?
That has not been very forthcoming. The state legislature did not take that up as a bill this year, and we tried to get a study committee for the summer, and that we weren't able to do that either. And I think that what we need is a strong pilot program, an example of what land banking can do. And because we're the first land bank created under this new statute, I think that Muncie could really be the example of how this can be done correctly that might convince the state legislature to change some of its laws. This is how Cuyahoga County worked. They were given pilot status to try out land banking. They were successful, and then statewide land banking law passed, more or less.
I'd like to get a list of the SOPs that the Muncie Land Bank has adopted.
You got it.
And I would also like the board members' names too. Can you forward those to me, please?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Mr. Henry, we have the policies and procedures for the land bank that Gus wrote in draft form.
Mhm.
And within the next month, we'll be working to get those into finalized form. Would you like the draft or would you like the final?
The draft would be fine.
Okay.
Thank you. I'd just like to read through
Okay.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation, all your hard work.
Thank you very much, and I would like to commend the county for the title sale. That's an enormous innovation, and it's very helpful. And we hope to fill in some needs around the title sale. Thank you.
it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ed. Okay, under contracts, oh, do you want to say something?
No, I'm just gonna shut this down.
Contracts agreements, the merchant McIntyre, Mr. Lookout here today.
Good morning, Commissioner Brad Lookout with Delaware County Economic Development. At your last meeting, I gave a presentation regarding the merchant McIntyre work that has been undertaken. Also last week, I forwarded to you all and the county attorney the services agreement. If you're so okay with this agreement, there's a resolution in your agenda today that you would pass that so approves this resolution. I'm happy to answer any questions regarding this. Was one revision that I made to the services agreement. It did have, I think this was written when Commissioner King was president. I removed Commissioner King as signer and included Mrs. Sherry Reagan as president signer of the agreement. I can give a good copy to the auditor after the meeting.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the service agreement and also the resolution 2019-021.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Ms. Reagan.
Yes,
Thank you, Commissioners.
thank you. Okay, Title 40. That's a bold here.
Renee Ball, Title 44. This is just our annual agreement and contract that needs signed for our digital recording equipment in the courtroom. And it came to our attention that we needed to have you guys start signing it instead of the judges.
John, have you looked it over?
I have, I don't see any problem with it.
Motion to approve. Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Ms. Reagan.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, ordinance first reading 2019-013, copies.
This is an ordinance that we drafted at the request of the state auditor.
The state auditor brought it to our attention that the fees have been increased by the state legislature for property transfers. As part of the property transfer process, when you record a deed, you have to take the sales disclosure agreement to the auditor. And that was always been $5. The legislature increased it to $10. So this is to reflect that change.
I'll make a motion, we introduce ordinance 2019-013.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Ms. Reagan.
Yes.
There's no hurry on this one because the fees don't go into effect till July 1. So
Oh, thank you. Okay, resolution for the 2022.
I think we did both of those and,
2019-22 is a resolution for the transfer of properties to certain nonprofits. It's for the process. In the deed sale, there was a request made by the Cardinal Greenway, and there's some others that have requested properties. And this is the process to get it started. What this resolution does is approve a public hearing to be conducted, I think at the next meeting, for these entities to come in and make their pitch to the commissioners as to why they should receive these properties. So this is just to get that ball started.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Henry,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Ms. Reagan.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. Down to department heads, elected officials. Anyone wish to speak? I was hoping the sheriff might be here today. Would you like to talk about your summer camp?
Sure.
Sorry for the, sorry for the, not everybody reads the paper, takes the paper, so.
Jeff Stanley, Chief Deputy Sheriff's Office. So we have the summer camp coming up again. Sheriff Ray Dudley started it 3 years ago. This is the 4th year running. We're going to continue what he started. We think it's a great program for the community, great program for kids. So I think we're going to take about 100 applicants, kids throughout the community, and we're going to continue, like I said, what Sheriff Dudley started.
I'm sure we can link up on our webpage, but it's 100 students and what, 12 to 15, I believe, Dave?
Yes, yeah, ages 12 through 15. The fair has been, or Muncie, the fairgrounds here has been gracious enough to let us use one of their buildings throughout the week in case of inclement weather or anything like that. So we have many activities planned. Hopefully we can continue to stay outdoors instead of indoors.
And everybody's getting rested up now, because it's a lot of work for you guys.
We hope so, yes.
Well, thanks for coming, Jeff.
Okay.
Sorry to put you on the spot, but
No worries.
June 12th, or what is the date, Jeff?
It is,
It's coming up pretty soon.
yes, it is.
22nd, maybe.
The week of the 17th through 20th, or 17th through 20th of June.
Yeah, 17. Very good. Anybody else? Okay.
Jason, has the city reached out to you or Paul yet about what they're doing with EMS?
Jason Rogers, Emergency Management Director. No, Paul and I had a discussion Friday about some of the things that would need to be done to make changes into the system. It's not an easy, or it won't be an easy transition. There's going to be a lot of planning to get that done. But as of Friday afternoon, our conversation, neither one of us do have any further information.
Okay. And the city's only going to run what, BLS?
I can't answer that question.
I know it's been put in the paper
Yeah,
that
I mean,
that's what they plan on doing, but, you know, sometimes BLS can turn into ALS pretty quick. And, you know, we did have the shooting not too long ago that, you know, you send certain BLS there.
How many medics were at that scene? How many paramedics were at that scene?
Put me on the spot, I think 5.
So there you go.
John, is there any way we could get you to draft some sort of letter to the city?
Be happy to.
Because the county would like to know where they're going and what they're doing, so we can prepare.
Okay.
Because I'm sure Paul has a lot that he has to do through 911.
Paul, could you come up?
Because the way it looks to me, one way or another, we got about 6 months and we're gonna have a new mayor, thank God. But, you know, from the county standpoint, we wanna know what they're doing so we can, you know, get our paramedics and our EMS. We wanna make sure that, you know, that just isn't sprung on you guys, because there's a lot of work you two's gonna have to do to get this done. And we know they've already bought four, so what are they gonna do? And I know the mayor said that, you know, that his own city council are a bunch of liars, but, you know, they want the same information that we want. We wanna know what's going on.
We have a medical director as well as EMS, that we have to have our protocols approved in writing by our medical director. And it's my opinion, until we get a plan and we get our 911 plan in place and approved by our medical director, that it's a liability for us to do anything.
So Paul, right now, the way it's set up, correct me if I'm wrong, with the ambulances that Delaware County have strategically located in the city and the county, those ambulances are responsible for certain areas. So those ambulances get called to certain areas upon the receipt of a 911.
Right, ideally, they stay in a certain area, but like anything else, it's.
Sure. But point being is, so depending on where Muncie is gonna put these ambulances, you're gonna have to restructure the enhanced 911, correct? Because
Yes.
how long will that take? I think it's been said that you'll just have to push a button.
I can't give you a time frame, but it is labor intensive to redo each run part, because you might help me out here,
So what Paul's trying to articulate is the address has, we'll use this address, right? So we're at 100 West Main Street. 100 West Main Street has initial response cards. So who the first police officer, first fire engine, first ambulance that would come to this address are automatically assigned when you type the address in. Then, if it is a nature of a certain type, if it's a business fire, then these other fire assets are going to be added. If it is a medical call where you've got two patients, what district does that second ambulance come from? Maybe the paramedic supervisor needs to be alerted. We have 23 different call types that we use. That the automatic call to the supervisor is dispatched, so they're aware. And then who is backing up the police when they get dispatched. So each one of those addresses is what he's talking about is going to have to be changed. So just to use as an example that I read in the newspaper, if they're going to put an ambulance in Station 6, which is up on Dr. Martin Luther King, then up in McCullough Park, then every address in that particular district that they're choosing to respond that truck to has got to be, Delaware County EMS has got to be removed as the primary, and Muncie Fire Ambulance 6 or whatever it's going to be would have to be made as the primary responding unit. And that way, when an address comes in, when your home address, whomever's in this room comes up, then it says who to send immediately. And that allows two dispatchers to work on the same call at the same time. So if Paul's the dispatcher and I'm the call taker, I answer 911, I'm typing in your address, he automatically knows who to send with regard to the nature code that I'm putting in.
Right.
If that explains it.
Right, and then there's also the decision on each level of need, whether it's BLS or ALS. And then there's gotta be some type of agreement on, if it's BLS, is the city gonna do it? If it's ALS, does the county go automatically, or does the city go and the county backs them up? So there's a lot of details that have to be worked out. So you don't have 2 or 3 ambulances or 4 ambulances arrive on the same.
Right.
And I agree with Paul, that's a total misappropriation of assets and resources. We've been talking about this for months, you know, if this goes into effect, what exactly can we do to try to make it a smooth transition, whether that's going to, you know, breaking up transport ambulances and creating squad paramedics, so we're just sending the right asset to the right call. You know, and Paul's right, when we're busy, it is like a chess game, and we're crisscrossing and we're trading calls, and you know, who is going to be closer and all that sort of thing. Those questions can't necessarily be answered without knowing what the plan is.
Right, I think the reason I brought Paul up here is because I know it is gonna be labor intensive, it is, and it's my opinion that if we're gonna make this big change, and dispatch is gonna have to do that we need to make sure Paul and his people keep track of their time, because I want the city to pay for that.
Yeah, I agree.
If that's what we're gonna do, we're gonna redo the whole city, then the city needs to pay for it.
Yep.
So keep track of your time, if that comes up.
And at this point, I have not been through that type of change yet. So I can't tell you whether it's a day, a week, a month. You know, some of my workers will have a better idea of what that'll take. The ones that were involved in the initial build out.
Well, I can speak a little bit to that because we added Medic 8 about 5 years ago into the city, and what they had to do is section out, work with GIS and the CAD coordinator at dispatch, section out what portions, and then they went through every address and said, okay, we're creating a new medic on the west side of town. And I would say it took her a couple of weeks just for that one section.
Yeah, because I'd like to see their plan.
Oh, absolutely.
I would like to see the city's plan so we can sit down, but from my understanding, reading the newspaper and listening to them talk at the council meetings, they don't have a plan. Now, what really gets me is we were building a new justice center. We had 60 to 70 people in here in an uproar. They don't even have a plan, but they're buying their ambulances, and this is public safety. This has to do with the safety of the citizens within their community with no plan. That has not went to the EMS director, has not went to the 911 director with a plan, hasn't came to the commissioners with a plan.
Nor a timeline.
No, if I was the people in the city of Muncie, I would be showing up to their meeting tonight. I'd be calling the mayor and wanting to see a plan. Because like I said, he's only got 6 more months in office. Does he plan on doing this within the 6 months before he leaves office? Because the new mayor could come in and scrap it all. So I want to see a plan. John, could you draft a letter requesting their plan for their EMS so we can work with our EMS director and Paul Singleton on the 911 director on where are we going to go with this?
I will draft it for your approval and send it also not only to the mayor, but also to the fire chief.
Okay.
Because he seems to be the one spearheading this, maybe he has a plan.
So I think there's 2 things to leave you with. One is dispatch's medical director and our medical director are one and the same. Currently, I believe he is also the medical director for the city. So I think it's going to weigh heavily on what medical protocol is supposed to be. And, you know, we certainly, we pay him to do that for us. So I would expect maybe some answers there. The other thing is commissioners, I want to say in 14 or 15, put together our intercept fee structure, and it's been in place, I think 9 or 10, or, I mean, I guess I shouldn't speculate. There are several other communities that we work with, Firebase EMS, that they pay their portions of those fees. So that's been in place for 4 or 5 years now. So, you know, the intercept fee on somebody that we have a contract with within Delaware County for 911, that's not part of our ambulance fund, is $200 per call. And if you're a non-signing member, or I'm sorry, if you're a non-signing service that is taking our services, it's $500 a call. So we do have, as an example, I think we have with what is IU, Blackford County, we've sent them bills for $500 each time that they call for our paramedic assistance. So, I mean, it's a well-established fee structure that's been in place for a while. So, I mean, I think all our cards are on the table.
Yeah. Well, Jason, we got a great EMS, Delaware County EMS, and it's not broke. So what are they trying to fix? That's what I would like to know.
The narrative has changed several times.
Yeah.
And, you know, first it was that they were gonna make money, and then, you know, then it was a horribly broken system. And then,
Now it's underserved.
now it's underserved.
Yeah.
But my question to you is, Commissioner King, directly, was this underserved community, was that an issue with the mayor and the fire chief when they approached you about billing everybody more money?
No, it was just about making money. It was, they thought that they were going to get $1.2 million.
So that was never brought
No,
up?
and it was actually proven to them because of the write-offs and everything, that their numbers was completely wrong, that it might generate somewhere close to $100,000. It wasn't $1.2 million like when they first came to us, and they were asked to get their numbers and then come back and talk to us. Never happened, because we were right with our numbers, and they were wrong because they didn't take into effect that the write-offs that we do. You know, we do around $1 million write-offs a year. $5 million write-off a year. You know, they wasn't looking at that. They were, from my understanding, they just went and got our call runs and added $100 to every call run. They didn't take off, you know, to where we write off, you know, money a year. So, and like I said, and I think that was back in 13 when we told them to get the real numbers and come back and talk to us. Never happened. Now, you know, one of the things they did talk about was the gas for their fire trucks, tires, wear and tear on their vehicles. So this, see, we're supposed to help one another in public safety. So is this one of the things where a small town goes to us now and says, well, our police department's back up the sheriff's department, so we want you guys to pay for gas and wear and tear on our vehicles? You know, it makes no sense to me. It really doesn't. You know, our sheriff's department goes inside the city and they help the city police officers. When they're in helping the city police officers in your small towns, departments have to leave their small towns to go out in the county to do it. So are we all gonna start going after one another saying that we need gas money and we need wear and tear? That's not public safety. You know, we sign agreements to help one another. And that's the way it should be in the city with Delaware County EMS. Like I said, it's not broke. Why are they trying to fix it? And we've got a great EMS service. You know, don't fool with it. And like I said, 6 months he's gone. Is he gonna try to put this in 6 months and then you guys are gonna have to run around and try to figure it out? No. We need a plan. We need something from him. If they're gonna do it, show us a plan. And like I said, when we did our Justice Center, this place was packed with people. We had different organizations up here talking against it, talking against different things. We're talking about people's lives here. And I've watched those meetings. I've seen EMS workers go up there and talk. I've seen you go up there and talk, Jason. I've seen some council members go up there and talk. But these organizations, I have not seen them step up and ask for a plan or ask anything of Mayor Dennis Tyler or the president, Doug Marshall, of the city council. They need to go and show up to these meetings, not just here at the county, but we're talking about the safety of the citizens. They need to show up those meetings and ask those questions of that mayor. I'm lucky I live out in the county, so you guys are gonna be taking care of me whenever I need it. So thank you for that.
Plus you're in the city.
I try to stay out. But thank you guys. We'll try to get some information.
You both will be there tonight at their meeting?
No, I have a prior engagement.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Gotta step up to the podium, Ron.
Yeah. Thanks.
My name's Ron Quakenbush, 518 South Bridgewater in Yorktown. I'm representing the county council today, and I want to thank the commissioners for your sincerity and your passion and compassion about this subject. I think you've stated it quite well. You've heard me before discuss this program as I was involved in your position many years ago when all these decisions were made to create what we have today, and then many elected officials since then endorsed it and kept it going. The auditor, Mr. Craycraft, reminded me this morning that budgetarily this year, 2019, we would not have had to borrow money to operate on if the city had paid their past due fees owed to the council. We had to borrow money from our rainy day fund, and we had to borrow a little bit of money from a bank. But this would have been a goal that started way back when James King was on council as president, the position I'm in. It's taken a while to get there. We almost made it. Hopefully we'll make it next year. But we didn't discuss this in depth, but I did express some concerns at the council meeting. And I just want to remind everyone, turn your budgets in for the year 2020 as though nothing has happened. We can always change those budgets at council time, completely change them. We can rewrite them with the cooperation of the council and the commissioners. Those budgets can completely be changed as long as we stay within that gross amount, that total amount. I want to make that, emphasize that, not only to the commissioners who already know this, but to those in this room and those that may watch it on TV, that there is a prerogative there, and the sincerity I hear this morning, I'm sure you folks will be right in there with us, working together to make these budgets work out. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Ron. Any other elected official? Well, I think this is the time that I'd like to take, starting my 7th year as a commissioner, and I'm sorry I didn't get to give the other commissioners some prior notice that today I'm going to request that we do submit a new employee as a county engineer. The state has even upped the reimbursement that each county receives from $20,000 to $40,000 for a county engineer. And I was sent a memo or an email from Du Bois County, and they have a bridge crew that goes out and fixes their own bridges and culverts. They take in about $860,000 a year, and they spend about $820 per year. They have a 4-man bridge crew, a foreman who is also an operator, and 3 truck drivers and carpenters. So they are equipped with a wheel excavator like we have, and they work on 2 to 3 new bridges a year, and also replace 3 or 4 culverts a year. So it's just little things like this that we could do in-house to save us some money.
Size of the bridges.
I'm sorry?
Size of the bridges.
They can do up to an 80-foot, they can construct up to a 50-foot span, 17 tall steel beam structure for approximately $190,000. So we don't have to do something like they're doing, but
We already do the culverts though.
I'm sorry,
We already do the culverts.
we do some, we do some. But my question is, Angie Moyer, our bridge project director, our project director, does a wonderful time, and I'm not wanting to take anything away from Angie. But we are now facing 193 bridges, less than 800 miles of roads, which means 1,600 miles of ditches that aren't necessarily getting cleaned out. Then we have about 15 buildings that we're now in charge of. And no one per se is over the maintenance of this. So if we are growing our community, there's just maintenance that needs to be done. And I believe we could hire a person with 5 years experience and maybe 20 hours part-time help, so Angie doesn't get bogged down with helping a new person, for about maybe $120,000 budget. First year we'd have to buy a truck, some equipment, office, computer, stuff like that. But I just want us to think about it and request when we have our next meeting to look at possibilities. Because it has to be turned in like Ron said. And Ron, I believe you even agree that it's time to hire an engineer.
Always have.
So we would have to get council's approval, of course. So I'd like to say, I'm sorry?
Just one vote. I'm just one vote.
Well, that's what I say, we have to get approval of council. But I really think it would pay for, that person would pay for themselves, because just like at home, you have a leak in the house, you have to get that leak taken care of, or you're gonna have a lot of trouble. And I think we're paying about, what is it, 15,000 for a consultant, Angie. Yeah. So that's my case, so.
Just a point of clarification, to qualify for that reimbursement, the person you hire has to be a registered licensed engineer.
Right. And I have some figures, and Donna said wherever we take out the salary, they'd have to pay the, what is it?
The benefit.
The benefits out of there. So,
So we're gonna find an engineer that can engineer our bridges, and a structural engineer to also look at our buildings,
civil engineer is what I'm looking at.
that can do all that. So we won't have to hire any more engineering firms.
Right. Well, we'd still
You'll
apply
still
to
have to hire consulting firms, you'd still have to have
do
that architect.
inspections maybe.
You'll still have to have the architects to design it. You'll still have to, like certain bridges that we'll have, we'll still have to get the consulting firms. They'll still have to go to the architects. We'll still have to have other construction companies come in and construct
Well, you
the
don't know.
bridges.
There's some, we'll just have to see what some other counties are doing. But it's mostly the buildings that I'm worried about. I mean, here we've got a new building out there, and I believe Shannon and I wanted somebody with some constructions on one of the committees. But it's just things like that we get this report back. I believe, Angie, there's about 4 pages of bridges that need to be caulked or.
Yeah, I need manpower, and I need a lot more money to make my repairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
That's
one
the
of the
big key.
things too, is money.
We need to become more efficient.
John, like on the bridge side, isn't there a certain amount that we can go up to, or something, like to take a penny or something out of that to create more money? Does it have to come from like the general fund? I know at one point in time, wasn't that taken away from the bridge?
My understanding, the levy was reduced at one point to help out something
else.
Never got it back.
And never got it back to help out with the bridges.
Right, the county bridge fund is a separate tax, it's a cumulative tax. So that rate is paid as, in addition to the county tax. So that rate can only be used for bridge work. You can't use general fund money.
Right.
You can use edit fund money, but you can't use general fund money to pay for bridges or highways. And the highway fund is to fund for the roads.
Right.
But salaries from the bridge crew come out of that as well.
I think it's something we need to look at because we are running low on our bridge fund. And how many of the wood structures do we have?
About 30. And
What,
Approximately 30 structures.
30 of them? We had 2 of them go down last
we've
year.
had 3 in the past.
That's totally unexpected.
Yeah, so, and that's something that probably should never have happened, but I understand at that time that was the money they had, so they put all these wooden bridges in and now they're all going bad, so.
And even if you hired a structural engineer and everything else, without having the money to actually go out and repair these.
What can he do?
Yeah,
Well,
I believe they're past the deadline for 2020 to
right, but it's still
Well, they
something
can-
that we might have to
Look
be
at
done
it.
by.
look at.
Yeah.
we'll just do some talking,
Okay, sounds good to me.
okay?
The state appropriated $920,000 to a highway engineer fund for all the counties to assist. So there's no guarantee that you would
We would get
you
the,
would get the full 40,000 because there's not enough money in that fund.
They don't all have engineers.
No, but if they did, then the 920,000 wouldn't
Right.
be enough.
Okay, very good. Monthly weights and measures.
I can help you out with that penny. I was a commissioner when we gave that penny up to the county general fund. The county auditor requested it balance out so we could give the employees a raise,
okay,
and it's never been put back.
okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Ron.
Okay, weights and measure report we received. Payments of claim of $1,277,056.67.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. Henry.
Yes.
Ms. Reagan.
Yes. Now, time for the public. Having complaints, compliments, we love compliments. And if not, entertain a motion for recess.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Ms. Reagan.
Yes. Thank you very much.